It's Goldman Diaries. The morning after I bought the house we had dreamed about for years, Jake brought her into it, his mistress. No warning, no hesitation. Just walked in with her, laughing, like it was the most natural thing in the world. I stood at the top of the staircase, still clutching the receipt from the closing in my hand, the paper crumpling under my fingers. They didn't see me at first. Or maybe they did. Maybe they just didn't care. The woman was twirling around the living room, her voice echoing off the high ceilings I thought we'd fill with memories. She giggled, running her hands along the fireplace mantel, the one Jake said reminded him of his grandparents' house. The house he said we would raise our family in, grow old in. My stomach twisted so violently I thought I might throw up. "This place is perfect," the woman said, spinning around to face him, her arms wide open like she owned it. Jake just smiled, that lazy, careless smile I used to believe was meant for me. I couldn't breathe, couldn't move. Everything I'd worked for, every sacrifice, every late night and broken promise, every stupid dream, it all collapsed in a heartbeat. I had planned to surprise him. I thought he'd be proud. I thought we'd finally be starting the life we always talked about. Instead, he was already starting a new life, and I wasn't part of it. He finally noticed me standing there. His eyes flickered, just for a second. No guilt, no panic, just irritation. "Rachel," he said, like I was the one who ruined the moment. The woman froze. She glanced up at me, then quickly looked away, like I was some stray dog that had wandered inside. I opened my mouth, but no words came out. "What is this?" I finally managed to choke. Jake shrugged, completely unfazed. "It's better this way. You'll see." "Better for who?" I stumbled back a step, my heel catching on the edge of the stair. The world tilted. I caught myself on the banister, fingers digging into the wood until they ached. The woman walked past me without a word, disappearing into the kitchen, our kitchen, humming some pop song under her breath. I wanted to scream, to rip everything apart. But I didn't. I stood there, frozen, the receipt still crumpled in my fist. "This isn't happening," I whispered. But it was. Jake leaned against the wall, arms crossed casually. "You're overreacting. We can all just figure it out. Figure it out." Like I was just some minor inconvenience he could rearrange. I felt something inside me crack. A slow, silent fracture that would never heal. Without a word, I turned and walked toward the front door. Behind me, I heard the woman laughing again, softer now, like a cruel little ghost echoing through empty halls. I stepped outside. The cold air hit me like a slap, but I welcomed it. At least it reminded me I was still alive. I didn't know where I was going. I didn't even take my coat. I just knew I had to get away from there. From him. From everything. As I reached the sidewalk, I glanced back one last time. The house stood there solid, beautiful, full of everything I thought I wanted. But it wasn't mine anymore. It had never been mine. I wrapped my arms around myself, feeling the receipt in my pocket like a dead weight. My whole life had shattered in a single morning, and I knew I couldn't stay here another second. But what would happen next? I didn't even feel the cold anymore. I walked fast, almost running, the driveway spinning under my feet. The world around me blurred, the bare trees, the parked cars, the whole neighborhood that I thought would be ours. I didn't look back. I made it to my car and yanked the door open with shaking hands. My breath came in short, shallow gasps as I threw myself inside and slammed the door shut. For a moment, I just sat there, gripping the steering wheel, my forehead resting against it. The keys slipped from my fingers and clattered to the floor. I didn't pick them up. I stared at the house through the windshield, his house now, and waited for the sobs to come. But they didn't. Instead, a strange calm settled over me. A brittle, dangerous kind of calm. The engine roared to life when I finally turned the key. I didn't know where I was going, just that I couldn't stay here another second. I pulled away from the curb, tires crunching over the gravel. Half a block down, my phone buzzed in the passenger seat. I ignored it. It buzzed again. Finally, at a red light, I glanced down. Jake. I let it ring. But something inside me needed to hear it, needed to know how he would explain this. I picked up on the fourth ring, my hand trembling. "Rachel," he said, like he was already annoyed. "Don't be dramatic." I opened my mouth to answer, but no words came out. "You're making this harder than it needs to be," he continued. "Brittany and I, it just happened. You'll get used to it. Get used to it." I gripped the steering wheel so hard it hurt. "You're still part of this," he said, almost cheerfully. "We can figure something out. You just have to be flexible." Flexible. Like I was a piece of furniture he could move around. I clicked the phone off without saying a word and tossed it onto the passenger seat. I drove aimlessly for hours, the city blurring into one long stretch of asphalt and blinking traffic lights. At some point, I ended up parked outside a 24-hour diner, staring blankly at the neon sign buzzing overhead. Inside, couples laughed over late-night pancakes. A family squeezed into a booth, their kids coloring on paper placemats. I pressed my forehead against the steering wheel again, feeling like the glass was the only thing holding me together. How had it come to this? I had spent years building a life with him, sacrificing, believing, waiting for the right moment to finally make it real. And now I was the outsider, looking in. Part of me still clung to the hope that maybe, this was a phase, a mistake, that he would call again, apologize, realize what he was throwing away. But another part, the part of me that had stood frozen on those stairs watching him smile at her, knew the truth. He wasn't sorry. He wasn't confused. He had chosen her. I wiped my face with the sleeve of my sweater and forced myself to breathe. There was no fixing this. There was no going back. The only question now was, what next? I stared down at my phone, half expecting it to buzz again. It didn't. The realization hit me harder than anything he'd said. He didn't care if I stayed or left. He had already moved on. He had already replaced me. My hands tightened on the steering wheel. I could go back. I could beg. I could fight for scraps of attention from a man who saw me as nothing but a complication. Or I could leave with whatever dignity I had left. The thought was like a knife, sharp, painful, but it cut through the fog. I put the car in gear and drove back to the house. This time, I didn't hesitate. I walked in through the garage, straight past the kitchen where Brittany's purse was tossed carelessly on the counter. I grabbed a duffel bag from the closet and moved methodically, silently, pulling my things from drawers, from the closet, from the bathroom. I didn't pack everything. Only what mattered. Every minute I stayed, I felt the walls closing in tighter, like the house itself was pushing me out. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't slam doors. I just took what was mine and walked out. I didn't even leave a note. I didn't owe him that. As I stepped back into the cold night air, the door clicking shut behind me, a hollow pit opened in my chest. I was leaving behind more than a house, more than a marriage. I was leaving behind the life I thought I had. But what was waiting for me now? I didn't go back for days. Not once. Not even to check if he noticed I was gone. But through mutual friends, through whispered updates I hadn't asked for, the picture was clear enough. Jake had moved Brittany in the very next night. They posted photos, cozy dinners, lazy mornings on the porch, walks around the neighborhood I had chosen for us. I watched it all from the tiny, musty guest room at my sister's house, sitting cross-legged on a borrowed bedspread, staring at my phone until the screen blurred. It was like I had died, and someone else was living my life. Brittany wore my sweaters, drove my car, hosted parties in my kitchen. Jake beamed in every picture, looking happier than I had seen him in years. Maybe happier than he ever was with me. And the sickest part? No one seemed surprised. I lay awake at night, staring at the cracked ceiling, feeling a fury so deep it hollowed me out. But I didn't lash out. I didn't show up at the house or call him screaming or post anything online. I knew better. He wanted me to crack. He expected it. So I didn't. Instead, I went quiet. I started small. I dug out every file, every paper, every email I had ever saved about the house, the loans, the business registrations Jake had ignored because it wasn't romantic to talk about paperwork. Turns out, when you let one person do all the boring stuff, you hand them the keys to the kingdom. Quietly, methodically, I gathered everything. While he was playing house, I was laying the foundation for something he wouldn't see coming. The house wasn't technically his. It was owned by an LLC, one I had created years ago, back when we thought it might be smart for tax purposes. And guess whose name was on all the legal documents? Not his. Mine. Every signature, every notarized form, every record pointed to me. I ran my fingers over the thick stack of papers late one night, heart hammering in my chest. It would be so easy. So clean. But still, I hesitated. This wasn't who I was. I wasn't vindictive. I wasn't cold. Or at least, I hadn't been. But he had burned our life to the ground without a second thought. And now he was sitting in the ashes, smiling. I folded the papers carefully, sliding them into a new binder. I wasn't going to fight him on his level. I wasn't going to throw a tantrum. I was going to win, quietly, completely. The next morning, I scheduled a meeting with my lawyer. I wore jeans and a sweatshirt, blending into the background of the downtown office, feeling invisible and dangerous all at once. We sat across from each other at a long glass table. "I want to move everything officially into my name," I said. The lawyer glanced at the documents, eyebrows raised. "It already is." I nodded, swallowing the lump in my throat. "Then I want to make sure it stays that way. Whatever it takes." She smiled slightly, professional and cold. "Understood." By the time I left the office, the sun was setting, streaking the sky in bruised purple and angry red. I stood on the sidewalk, binder clutched against my chest, feeling the weight of what I had just done. There was no turning back now. I wasn't just walking away anymore. I was taking everything with me. And when the dust finally settled, Jake would be left standing in the ruins, wondering when it had all slipped through his fingers. I could no longer return to the life I had before. But deep down, I knew he would get exactly what he deserved. The papers were signed before Jake even realized something was wrong. I sat across from the bank officer, calm, detached, as she slid the final document toward me. A few signatures. A few notarized seals. And everything, the house, the company accounts, the backup savings Jake didn't even know existed, was now locked tight in my name. No loopholes. No arguments. No way back. By the time I walked out into the afternoon sun, I had severed the last invisible ties he could pull. I didn't answer his texts. I didn't take his calls. He didn't know it yet, but I was erasing myself from his life piece by piece, the same way he had erased me from his. Back at my sister's house, I boxed up the last of my belongings. Nothing sentimental. Only what mattered now. Documents, accounts, leverage. Every time I hesitated, every time the old part of me whispered, "What if he changes?" I thought about Brittany laughing in my living room. And the hesitation burned itself out. Meanwhile, Jake lived in blissful ignorance. Photos popped up online, pool parties in the backyard, Sunday brunches in the kitchen I had renovated, new curtains in the windows I had picked out. Brittany draped herself across the porch railing, wearing sunglasses I was pretty sure were still technically mine. Jake looked content, smug, like he believed he had won. But he hadn't read the fine print. And soon, he was going to find out how much it cost to build a life on someone else's foundation. While he was busy playing house, I was meeting with lawyers, restructuring the LLC that owned the home, filing quiet claims that would make it almost impossible for him to contest anything later. I left no fingerprints, no warning signs. To him, it looked like I had just disappeared. Broken. Defeated. Exactly what he wanted to believe. I let him think it. It made what was coming even sweeter. One afternoon, while Jake posted a photo of Brittany sunbathing by the pool, my pool, I stood in a sterile office downtown, signing one last document. The title transfer. Full and irrevocable. To me, it was done. The house might look the same from the outside, the paint, the lawn, the porch swings, but the ground underneath had already shifted. He just didn't know it yet. I watched the notary stamp the final page and felt a strange, cold satisfaction settle into my bones. Not rage. Not heartbreak. Something quieter. Sharper. This wasn't revenge. This was survival. I wasn't going to claw for his attention or fight for scraps of a life he had already thrown away. I wasn't going to waste another tear on a man who never intended to stay. I was going to take back everything that was mine and leave him standing in the ruins. I slipped the documents into my bag and stepped into the late afternoon light, the city buzzing around me like nothing had changed. But everything had. I smiled to myself, a small, private smile no one would see. I didn't need him to understand. I didn't need him to hurt. I just needed him to lose. And that loss was already unfolding, inch by inch, right under his feet. I decided I would fight, but not with him. I would fight for myself. And soon, he would realize, too late, just how much he had really lost. The envelope was waiting on the front porch when Jake stumbled back from the gym, half drunk on his own self-satisfaction. He barely noticed it at first, just a plain, stiff rectangle tucked under a pizza coupon. It wasn't until he dropped his duffel bag and bent to grab it that the weight of the paper registered. Heavy. Official. He tore it open with one hand, still scrolling through texts from Brittany with the other. At first, the words didn't make sense. Notice of hearing. Petition to confirm ownership. Summons to appear. He frowned, scanning the fine print, the dates, the signatures at the bottom. Rachel's name was there, crisp, neat, final. He tossed the papers onto the counter with a laugh. Typical Rachel. Overdramatic. Grasping at something to stay relevant. Brittany wandered in, barefoot and smiling, holding a mug of coffee. "What's that?" she asked, peering over his shoulder. "Nothing," Jake muttered, shoving the papers aside. "She's bluffing." But hours later, after Brittany had gone upstairs and the house had gone dark, he found himself digging the papers back out of the trash. Something about them gnawed at him, sharp and persistent, like a splinter he couldn't ignore. He flipped through the pages again, slower this time. Confirmation of sole ownership. Request for removal of unauthorized occupants. The words hit differently now. Sole ownership? He sat down at the kitchen table, heart pounding. For the first time in months, he opened his laptop and pulled up the documents he had ignored when Rachel handled all the boring stuff. It took hours, digging through emails, old scanned files, password resets, but when he finally found the deed, his blood ran cold. The house wasn't in his name. It wasn't even in both their names. It was owned by a company, an LLC, and the registered agent, the sole owner, the only listed authority on any legal paperwork, was Rachel. His hand shook as he clicked through page after page. There was no mention of him, no claim, no protection. He had no rights to the house. None. He wasn't a co-owner. He wasn't even a tenant. He was nothing. The realization slammed into him like a truck. Everything he thought was his, the kitchen, the pool, the living room where he laughed with Brittany, wasn't his at all. It never had been. It belonged to her. And she was coming back for it. He scrambled to dial her number, panic rising in his throat. The call rang once, twice, straight to voicemail. He tried again, and again. Nothing. He texted a long, frantic paragraph, full of half-formed accusations and demands. No response. He emailed. He even left a message with her sister. He frowned, scanning the fine print, the dates, the signatures at the bottom. Rachel's name was there, crisp, neat, final. He tossed the papers onto the counter with a laugh. Typical Rachel. Overdramatic. Grasping at something to stay relevant. Brittany wandered in, barefoot and smiling, holding a mug of coffee. "What's that?" she asked, peering over his shoulder. "Nothing," Jake muttered, shoving the papers aside. "She's bluffing." But hours later, after Brittany had gone upstairs and the house had gone dark, he found himself digging the papers back out of the trash. Something about them gnawed at him, sharp and persistent, like a splinter he couldn't ignore. He flipped through the pages again, slower this time. Confirmation of sole ownership. Request for removal of unauthorized occupants. The words hit differently now. Sole ownership? He sat down at the kitchen table, heart pounding. For the first time in months, he opened his laptop and pulled up the documents he had ignored when Rachel handled all the boring stuff. It took hours, digging through emails, old scanned files, password resets, but when he finally found the deed, his blood ran cold. The house wasn't in his name. It wasn't even in both their names. It was owned by a company, an LLC, and the registered agent, the sole owner, the only listed authority on any legal paperwork, was Rachel. His hand shook as he clicked through page after page. There was no mention of him, no claim, no protection. He had no rights to the house. None. He wasn't a co-owner. He wasn't even a tenant. He was nothing. The realization slammed into him like a truck. Everything he thought was his, the kitchen, the pool, the living room where he laughed with Brittany, wasn't his at all. It never had been. It belonged to her. And she was coming back for it. He scrambled to dial her number, panic rising in his throat. The call rang once, twice, straight to voicemail. He tried again, and again. Nothing. He texted a long, frantic paragraph, full of half-formed accusations and demands. No response. He emailed. He even left a message with her sister. Nothing. It was like she had vanished. Like she had been planning this, waiting for him to get comfortable, to sink so deep into the lie that he wouldn't see the ground disappear under his feet until it was too late. Jake slammed his fist against the table, rattling the half-empty wine glasses Brittany had left there from brunch. This wasn't just a mistake. This was a setup. Her plan. He could feel it now, like the slow tightening of a noose around his neck. But why wasn't she answering? And more importantly, what was coming next? The conference room smelled like stale coffee and cheap carpet glue. Jake shifted in the leather chair, his palms sweating against the arms as the lawyer across from him shuffled a thick stack of papers. He had expected a quick fix, a technicality, some legal jargon he could pay his way out of. Instead, the lawyer leaned back, laced his fingers together, and said the words that made Jake's stomach drop. "You have no claim to the property." Jake blinked. "What are you talking about?" "I live there." The lawyer didn't flinch. "You live there at the pleasure of the owner. And the owner isn't you." He pushed the paperwork across the table. Company filings, deeds, mortgage agreements. All of them pointed to the same brutal truth. Rachel had tied everything up tight, long before Jake had even realized there was a game being played. "You can't be serious," Jake said, his voice cracking in the sterile room. "I'm afraid I am," the lawyer said. "Legally, you're a guest. If she wants you out, you have no grounds to contest." Jake stared at the papers, the words swimming in front of him. No claim, no protection, no rights. The house, his house, wasn't his at all. It belonged to Rachel. Every barbecue on the patio, every lazy morning by the pool, every careless glass of wine spilled on the hardwood floors. All of it had happened in her house. And now she was taking it back. He pushed away from the table so fast his chair tipped over, crashing onto the carpet. The lawyer didn't move, didn't react, just waited. "What am I supposed to do?" Jake demanded, the panic rising in his throat. The lawyer shrugged, impassive. "Move out, or wait for the court order." The words hit like a punch. Court order. Eviction. Like he was some squatter who didn't belong. He stumbled out of the office into the glaring sunlight, the world tilting sideways around him. The ground he stood on, the life he thought was solid, crumbled a little more with every step he took. When he got home, Brittany was lounging on the porch swing, scrolling through her phone, a glass of iced tea sweating on the armrest beside her. She smiled lazily when she saw him. "Rough day?" she asked, her voice light and careless. Jake didn't answer. He couldn't. He pushed past her into the house, the walls closing in around him. Every framed photo, every throw pillow, every chipped coffee mug, it all looked different now. Not like home. Like a crime scene. His crime. And Rachel's silent, unstoppable justice. He tore through the office, yanking open drawers, searching for something, anything that could save him. Old bills. Expired insurance papers. Worthless receipts. No deeds. No titles. No leverage. His hands shook as he slammed the last drawer shut. Nothing. He had nothing. And she had planned it this way all along. While he laughed. While he partied. While he paraded Brittany through their friends and neighbors like some kind of prize. Rachel had been building a bomb under his feet. And now it was going off. He collapsed onto the couch, burying his face in his hands. For the first time since it all started, he realized. He hadn't just lost the house. He had lost everything. The suitcase hit the floor with a thud so loud it snapped me out of my haze. I looked up from the couch to see Brittany standing at the foot of the stairs, her arms crossed, her mouth set in a tight, hard line I had never seen before. "I'm not doing this," she said, her voice sharp enough to cut through the thick, stale air. I blinked, still half-dazed from the meeting with the lawyer, the court papers spread out on the coffee table like open wounds. Brittany didn't wait for an answer. She stomped into the living room, grabbed a stack of her things, designer handbags, a pile of makeup cases, and shoved them into the suitcase without looking at me. "Doing what?" I croaked, my throat dry. "This," she snapped, gesturing wildly around the house. "Living like squatters. Waiting for someone to kick us out." I opened my mouth to defend myself, but no words came. Because she was right. I had no answers. No promises. No future. Brittany zipped the suitcase shut with one angry pull and hoisted it upright. "You said we were building something," she spat. "You said this was ours." "It was," I protested weakly. She laughed, a bitter, ugly sound that made my skin crawl. No, she said, her voice dripping with contempt. It was hers. It was always hers. You just let me move into someone else's house and pretend. I stood up, reaching for her without thinking. She jerked away like I'd burned her. I'm not staying to watch you lose everything, she said, grabbing her keys off the hook by the door. I'm not going down with you. The words hit harder than any punch. Brittany, the woman I had destroyed my marriage for, the woman I had given everything to, didn't even hesitate. She just walked out. No drama. No goodbye. The door slammed behind her, rattling the glass in its frame. I stood there, frozen, staring at the empty hallway. Outside, her car engine roared to life. Tires screeched against the pavement. And then, silence. The house felt bigger now. Colder. Hollow. I wandered through the rooms like a ghost, touching the backs of chairs, the edges of door frames, the countertops where Brittany used to sit and laugh, swinging her legs. Gone. All of it. I ended up back in the living room, sinking onto the couch, my hands limp in my lap. Around me, the shadows grew longer, darker, pressing in from all sides. I had nothing left. No house. No relationship. No money. The friends who had cheered for me when I left Rachel had fallen silent, one by one, as the news spread. The invitation stopped. The texts dried up. No one wanted to catch failure like it was contagious. I was alone. Utterly, completely alone. And worse, I had done it to myself. I buried my face in my hands, the court documents crinkling under my elbows. For the first time, the finality of it all hit me in full. There was no fixing this. No crawling back. No starting over. Brittany was gone. The house was slipping through my fingers. And soon, very soon, the courts would make sure I had nothing left to even pretend about. She left. But deep down, I knew this was only the beginning. The eviction notice was taped to the front door in bright red letters. I didn't even have the energy to rip it down. I just stood there, my duffel bag slung over one shoulder, staring at it like maybe if I stared hard enough, it would disappear. It didn't. By the end of the week, the house would be locked up, my things tossed out like garbage. And me? I didn't know. I checked into a cheap motel 2 towns over, the kind where the carpets were sticky and the walls were so thin you could hear every cough, every argument, every whispered regret. The woman behind the desk didn't even look up when I handed over my last few crumpled bills. Room 206. It smelled like mildew and desperation. I dropped my bag on the floor and sat heavily on the edge of the sagging bed, staring at the cracked ceiling. This was it. This was all I had left. I spent the next few days drifting from one dingy motel to another, trying to convince myself it was temporary, that I could fix this, that one lucky break would turn it all around. I called old friends, the ones who used to beg me to come out for drinks, for weekends at the lake house, for Vegas trips I barely remembered. No one answered. I sent emails, left voicemails. Silence. I even texted Brittany once. A simple, pathetic "Are you okay?" She never responded. The world I had built, or thought I had built, had vanished. One morning, I woke up to find my car missing from the motel parking lot. Towed. Unpaid tickets. I sat on the curb with my head in my hands, the sun beating down on the back of my neck, feeling like the universe itself was piling on. I had nothing. No home. No car. No money. No one. I tried to get a job, anything, but it was harder than I thought. No one wanted a middle-aged man with a vague resume and no address. I picked up odd jobs where I could, cleaning gutters, hauling junk, fixing fences, but it barely kept me fed, let alone housed. Each night, I crawled into a different motel bed, the walls pressing in tighter, the ceiling cracking wider. I stopped recognizing my own reflection in the mirror. The sharp, confident man who used to smile back at me, the man who thought he could have it all, was gone, replaced by someone smaller, meaner, hollow. I thought about Rachel sometimes, late at night when the loneliness got so thick it felt like a second skin. I wondered if she ever thought about me. But deep down, I knew the truth. She had moved on. She had won. And I was nothing but a cautionary tale. One night, sitting alone on a splintered park bench, eating a gas station sandwich, it finally hit me. There was no going back. No redemption. No fixing it. The life I had destroyed for a fantasy, for a moment of selfishness, was never coming back. I had lost everything. But now I realized I couldn't go back. And what was coming next would leave me with even less. The judgment came faster than I expected. I was sitting in the back of a grimy coffee shop, nursing a cold cup of cheap coffee, when the email hit my phone. Final ruling, eviction granted. Immediate vacate required. I read the words once, twice, a third time. They didn't change. I stared at the glowing screen, the world tilting sideways around me. It was official now. I wasn't just homeless. I was a failure in the eyes of the law. I stumbled outside, the door banging shut behind me. The sunlight was too bright, the street too loud, the world too normal. Didn't they see it? Didn't they feel it? My life was over. I spent the next few days trying to fight it, clawing at any option I could find. I called the court clerk. I emailed lawyers, begged for help I couldn't afford. Every answer was the same. There's nothing you can do. It's done. Rachel had played the game better, smarter, colder, and she had won. I stood outside the courthouse 2 days later, clutching a battered folder of useless papers, watching as a moving van pulled up to the house I used to call mine. Strangers carried boxes, my boxes, out onto the lawn. Furniture, old clothes, fragments of a life I had shattered with my own hands. Neighbors slowed down as they drove past, rubbernecking the wreckage like it was some neighborhood spectacle. I caught a glimpse of myself in a car window. Sunken eyes, hollow cheeks, a man no one would recognize, not even himself. I wanted to scream, to smash something, to throw myself in front of the moving truck and dare them to run me over. But I didn't. I just stood there, a statue made of dust and regret. When the last box was gone, the movers slammed the truck doors shut without even looking at me. The lock on the front door clicked into place. The curtains were drawn. The house, my house, wasn't mine anymore. I drifted back toward town, my body moving on autopilot, my mind a void. The few people who still recognized me, old co-workers, distant acquaintances, turned away when they saw me coming. I was radioactive now, toxic, a walking cautionary tale. I slept in the back booth of the all-night diner for a few days until the manager caught on and kicked me out. After that, it was bus stations, empty benches, doorways when it rained. Everywhere I went, I carried the weight of my failure like a second skin. I thought about Rachel, how quiet she had been through it all. No screaming matches, no public revenge, just silent, calculated destruction. The kind you don't see coming until it's already too late. And now, sitting on the curb outside a shuttered grocery store, my jacket pulled tight against the cold, I finally understood. She hadn't needed to destroy me. I had done it to myself. Piece by piece. Lie by lie. Choice by choice. I thought I was building a new life. A better one. But all I had built was a house of cards. And now it had collapsed, leaving nothing but wreckage behind. I have nothing left. But how do I go on living? The first tenant moved in 6 weeks after the court finalized everything. I stood on the porch, keys in hand, watching as a young couple carried boxes into my house, laughing, planning, dreaming. Exactly what I had once imagined for Jake and me. I didn't feel sadness. I didn't feel anger. I just felt done. The house had a new life now. And so did I. The rent payments started flowing into my account, clean, steady, reliable. No late-night arguments. No broken promises. No betrayal. Just quiet, steady progress. I poured the first check into my new business, a small travel consulting firm I had dreamed of starting years ago but had always put off until the timing was right. The timing was never going to be right. You had to make it right. I learned that the hard way. I didn't hear from Jake after the eviction. Not once. No calls. No emails. No desperate apologies. Nothing. It was better that way. Sometimes, late at night, when the city lights flickered against my window, I wondered where he was. A cheap motel? A friend's couch? A park bench? But then I would close my laptop, pour myself a cup of tea, and get back to work. Because it didn't matter. He had made his choices, and I had made mine. I wasn't angry anymore. Not even a little. I wasn't seeking revenge. I wasn't trying to punish him. I had simply walked away. I had taken my life back piece by piece, while he stood there with matches, burning his own world to the ground. People ask me, sometimes, how I stayed so calm through it all, how I didn't fall apart, how I didn't lash out. The truth was simple. I didn't need to destroy him. All I had to do was leave him alone with his own mistakes. And that, in the end, was the worst punishment of all. Because the thing about selfish people, the truly selfish ones, is they don't realize they're drowning until the water is already over their head. They keep smiling, keep lying, keep sinking. And by the time they reach for you, for anyone, it's already too late. One evening, after a long day of client meetings, I walked by the old neighborhood. The house looked better than it ever had. Fresh paint, new flowers by the porch, children's toys scattered across the lawn. A real family lived there now. I smiled and kept walking, my heels clicking against the sidewalk. I didn't belong there anymore. I belonged somewhere else, somewhere better. For the first time in years, I felt light, unburdened, free. I wasn't trying to get revenge. I just left him with his mistakes. And he realized it too late. Have you ever watched someone ruin everything you built together and realize you couldn't save them? Write in the comments. Subscribe, more untold stories are on the way.